We both know Moon-young was just trying to get him naked. Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be giving my recap and thoughts on episode 11 of It's Okay to Not Be Okay, currently up on Netflix. Some pretty crazy and sweet stuff happened in this episode, and I know y'all wanted a reaction video from me on this specific one, but I just wasn't able to. I'm sorry. However, I do have a reaction video coming up for a portion of episode 12 and 13, so another double feature. And episode 12 definitely brought me to tears and was quite the shocker. A lot to look forward to in that. So make sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified when it comes out. So with that, let's get into the recap of episode 11 and I'll give you my thoughts at the end. We start off where we left off with the doctors and nurses at the OK Psychiatric Hospital looking for the escaped patient, OK Ron, and we see her show up at Moon-young's home. Kang-tae, having connected where OK Ron had run off to, had headed towards Moon-young's, but before he gets there, the patient OK Ron beats him to Moon-young. Moon-young invites her in for some tea and tries to ask her what she's doing at her house, and she says that she's just a fan of her mother's and knew because of listening to the doctors and nurses at the hospital that she was most likely gonna be alone on her birthday, and so she wanted to come wish her a happy birthday, and that's apparently it. Moon-young then asks OK Ron to leave, but she kind of ignores her and starts pushing Moon-young's buttons and touching her stuff. We see some similarities between these two, since when OK Ron sees the pen that Moon-young had previously stole, she picks it up pretty much saying the exact same thing that Moon-young did, which was that it was pretty. When Moon-young goes to take it though, OK Ron ends up kind of ripping it out of her hand and cutting her, and Moon-young, thinking of Kang-tae in this moment, starts counting to 3 before she picks up the letter opener on her desk to stab OK Ron. And it sort of works because before she counts to 3, OK Ron puts the pen down and apologizes, but she's not very sincere in her apology. By the time Kang-tae gets there, OK Ron is gone. We don't see her leave, but that's what Moon-young says, and he ends up spending the night. After Kang-tae realizes that Moon-young is okay, and they have a very romantic makeout session, Moon-young notices that Kang-tae is running a fever, so that night he stays over and she tries to take care of him, which, you know, she does her best, but, you know, she tries to get him to take a cold bath when really all he needs is a compress. They held each other through the night and woke up together. Well, Kang-tae woke up before Moon-young, but he was there when she woke up, so that was very sweet and romantic to see. The next morning, before Kang-tae leaves for work, he has a sit down with Moon-young and tells her everything about himself and Song-tae's past, how their mother was murdered and the trauma of Song-tae witnessing it and his fear of butterflies coming from that. He also admits his feelings for her and asks her to be by his side. He explains that he needs to be by his brother's side, but he needs her to be by his. Moon-young's very happy to hear this, and she says, "Of course, I'll stay by your side." After this confession, this makes Moon-young more determined to get Song-tae to forgive her, since she wants Kang-tae to move back in with her, and he can't do that without Song-tae coming with. And she also needs Song-tae, her best friend, to help her write her new book, which she was just recently inspired by the drawing that he threw at her the last time she went to try and get him to forgive her, and she needs her illustrator to illustrate the book that she's now sort of percolating on. Later at the hospital, when Kang-tae is back at work, we find out that OK Ron never came back, and the head nurse tells Juri that they need to pack her stuff up and give her bed to someone else on the list. I guess they have a wait list of patients who need to be admitted. Juri feels this is a little fast since she just disappeared, but the reasoning that the head nurse gives makes sense, and so when Kang-tae comes in to start work, she asks him to move her stuff. She also notices when he's signing in that he's smiling, and she's sort of taken aback by it, so he's obviously very happy after his little sleepover with Moon-young. When he's going through OK Ron's stuff, he finds a bunch of cards with whatever was written on them crossed out with a red pen. Now, he finds these in one of Moon-young's books, and instead of packing those with her stuff, he ends up taking them. I think to see if he can figure out what was written and crossed out. While inspecting them in the changing room, he's surprised by the director who had been behind him looking over his shoulder while he was examining the cards. And this was just such a funny scene, just because the director flat out calls out the fact that Kang Tae looks super happy today, and yesterday he looked super sad, and that he must have gotten laid last night instead of looking for the patient like he was supposed to. Kang Tae kind of tries to explain what really happened, but I mean, the director isn't completely wrong in that guess. And the director also starts to wonder out loud why Ok-ron went to Moon-young's in the first place, and was it really just to wish her a happy birthday? After realizing that the director is talking about Ok-ron and not him and Moon-young and last night, Kang Tae gives his theories as well to the director in hopes to help him figure out what Ok-ron was really planning, her motivation behind running away and going to Moon-young's. Like, is she a crazed fan or is she something else? It's a mystery. While that's going down, Moon-young is on her mission to get Sang Tae to forgive her, which leads her to going to Jae-soo's restaurant, where she first wins him over by ordering 10 pizzas and asks to speak to his part-timer while he makes them. Seeing dollar signs, Jae-soo immediately asks Sang Tae to go talk to Moon-young and completely changes his tune about her, since up until this point we've seen he hasn't been a big fan of hers and Kang Tae being with each other. So he's Team Moon-young now, and we see that stays for a while, since he thinks that he can probably get 10 more pizzas out of her. When Sang Tae comes over, since Jae-soo, his boss, tells him to, Moon-young tries to get Sang Tae to forgive her and work for her, since she has a story to write. She tells Sang Tae about it, bringing the illustration, saying that this is behind her inspiration, and he's interested, but he's also still being very stubborn. And so even after chasing him outside of the pizza restaurant, carrying 10 pizzas and just screaming at him down the street, he still does not forgive her. This leads Moon-young to visit Kang Tae and tell him about what happened and how she's feeling about it, which she describes as like she's a guy asking his girlfriend's father permission to marry his daughter, and that she can't believe that she's living that sort of life now. Kang Tae tries to make her feel a little better, but also kind of insists that they can't be together until Sang Tae forgives her and agrees to live with her as well with Kang Tae. He also kind of makes her feel worse by saying, it took Jae-soo like 10 years to get Sang Tae to like him, so, maybe it'll be faster for you, which this freaks her out. She's like, what? Are you kidding me? She's determined, but also she's feeling very like, gosh, this is not gonna happen. Now, I know what you're thinking, asking yourself. I was asking myself the same thing. What happens to the 10 pizzas? Well, Kang Tae thankfully takes them and drops them off at the nurse's station, so at least now Moon-young doesn't have to take 10 pizzas home and eat them by herself, which was kind of the scenario I thought we were gonna see, was her at home alone in that mansion eating 10 pizzas, but that's not the case. We also see that Juri goes on a date with Song-in in this episode to apologize for getting drunk and vomiting in Song-in's car the episode before, or a few episodes ago, and you can tell that he's growing on her. I thought this was a really sweet date, since at the start Juri starts asking questions about Moon-young, and Song-in eventually stops her and is like, I don't want to talk about Moon-young, I don't want to talk about Kang Tae, I want to talk about Jurin and Song-in, and I thought that was really sweet and romantic. I mean, what girl doesn't want to talk about herself and feel like she's the center of attention? And honestly, beardless Song-in is growing on me because of this scene. Now, still at the hospital, we find out Moon-young's dad is getting worse and doesn't have much time left because the tumor is spreading in his brain. It's been spreading this whole time, which explains a lot. And through the episode, Moon-young finds out about it, and people keep trying to tell her to go see him one last time. That evening, we see Kang Tae try to talk to Sang Tae about Moon-young in hopes that he can get Sang Tae to understand her better and forgive her. While that's going on, we find out that Kangtae sent over Songjae to be with Moonyoung since he couldn't be. And while Songjae is there, Moonyoung talks about what happened between her and Kdrama. She mentions that this woman said that she was a fan to Songjae, and Songjae kind of brings up her history with being a fan of someone and how when you're a true fan, you're not just a fan of that person, you find out everything about them, i.e. their family, when their family members' birthdays are. So it could be that Kdrama was just a big fan of her mother's, and because of that knew about Moonyoung's birthday. But it's still suspicious, so, you know, her being the mom can't be fully ruled out, though I'm starting to doubt it because they're making it so obvious now. Next day, while Songtae is finishing up the mural, the director comes over to inspect the work and asks again why he won't draw butterflies, and that he's not going to pay Songtae if he doesn't paint them. This leads Songtae to be very upset, since to him the director is going back on what he promised, which was to pay him when the mural was done, and obviously he doesn't want to paint butterflies. When Kangtae finds him sulking and talking to the chickens and ducks outside of the hospital, Kangtae tries to get him to talk about what happened, since Kangtae sees that Songtae also packed up all of the painting supplies as if he was done after what the director had asked him to do. Songtae refuses to talk about it and just sulks and walks away, and when they get home, as Songtae tries to hide and sulk some more about the situation, like he always does, Kangtae reminds him that he had promised he would start working on acting more like an adult, and adults don't do that. Now, this may be because of Moonyoung's influence or just everything else, but Kangtae is not as understanding and calm as he usually is when he's dealing with Songtae, and he ends up getting upset and kind of spanking Songtae or slapping him on the back, and Kangtae won't let the subject matter go and won't leave Songtae alone about it, and Songtae eventually does get violent, but Kangtae, instead of taking it, fights back, ends up biting him. It's like, I'm not gonna let you hit me anymore. And they end up having a full-on brotherly brawl. After the fight, Kangtae is surprisingly happy since he stood up for himself, and when Jae-soo, in a way, tries to blame the new behavior on Moonyoung, saying that the psychovirus sure has spread, Kangtae corrects him by saying that this is just him finally being himself. Meanwhile, Songtae is getting his wounds tended to by Juri and her mother, and as he tells them that Kangtae is no longer his brother and is just a stranger to him, Juri suggests that if that's the case, that her mother should adopt Kangtae now. Juri's mother is like, oh, that's a great idea, thank you, Songtae, obviously using this to manipulate him into changing his mind, since he gets a little jealous and is like, no, I don't want you to take my brother away. So he changed his tune pretty quickly. Obviously, he's just, you know, a little, what's the word I'm looking for? He's just a little salty about the situation, but obviously he loves his brother and is going to forgive him eventually. That night, as Songtae is sleeping, Kangtae is still awake, and we see the continued conversation between him and Jae-soo earlier, and Kangtae talking about how it's only been him and Songtae for a really long time, and that they need to learn to socialize with other people. And this is when Jae-soo asks, well, why does it have to be Moonyoung? And Kangtae says because she's the loneliest person he's ever met. And speaking of Moonyoung, she texts Kangtae that night while he's awake, thinking back on the conversation, to tell him that she's hungry. And when he doesn't respond, she's at her house getting upset. But don't worry, it's because he's heading over to her house in the middle of the night, which after everything that's happened has Moonyoung answering the knock at the door that she hears with a weapon, a shovel from the fireplace to be exact. And when she sticks it out the door, Kangtae grabs it and reminds her of what he had told her before, which was to keep the door locked and not to answer the door to strangers. He then asks what the shovel was for, and she doesn't really give an answer, instead asks why he's there, which he responds that you texted me you're hungry. We then see them at the subway having a late night sandwich, and Moonyoung is trying to get get Kong Tae to tell her why he looks all beaten up, thinking it was a patient. But when he finally tells her, she gets kind of annoyed with Kong Tae, since right now their mission is to get on Song Tae's good side, and I don't think fighting him is the way to do that. He's supposed to be greasing the wheels. What are you doing, bro? Moon Young at this point reminds Kong Tae that he should do what he's been telling her to do, and that's to think before you act. This is when Moon Young advises Kong Tae that maybe he should just tell Song Tae the truth about how he feels for her. You know, just be honest with your brother. He then says out loud that he likes Moon Young. But after he says it, he wonders what Song Tae would say to him if he told him that. When Kong Tae gets back home, we see him thinking back on his conversation with Moon Young at the subway when they were eating a late dinner, and her asking him when he's going to care about himself more than his brother. She also asks him what he really wants to do with his life, and he tells her, well, I've already kind of done 2 out of the 3 things. One was to go on a trip, which he did with her, and the second one was to have a fight with his brother, which he just did. So he is knocking that stuff off his bucket list. She then asks what was the 3rd one, and he says it's a little too late for that, since his 3rd wish was to go to a school where he had to wear a uniform. So obviously, because he's been on the run all this time, he never got to experience an actual student life. We then see him have the sweetest dream where he's a high school student wearing a uniform. But anyway, he's there with his classmates and sees Moon Young eating at the same restaurant and in a similar girls' version of the uniform. And so I guess in this dream world, they go to the same school, and he's been sort of eyeing her, and he sees that she's there alone. And this is his chance to kind of try and go talk to her, because he's obviously been noticing her. And as she leaves, Kong Tae follows her outside. Not in a creepy way, just, oh, this is my chance to go talk to her. And this is when my heart broke and my chest just tears. As he's mustering up the courage to at least talk to her, this is when his brother Song Tae comes running out, putting him in a chokehold, being like, what's up, little brother? And when he sees what Kong Tae is trying to do, he sort of helps move things along, since he needs a little help. But in this dream, Song Tae is not challenged. He's not on the spectrum. He's just your basic older brother who's just gotten off of work. I'm watching the scene right now in the background. Oh, it was so well done. It was really beautiful, and I know that you should just be happy with how a person is, accept them as they are, but he, didn't get a normal life. Neither of them did, and this dream was kind of like the dream world scenario, and it was just very sweet, very nicely done. Obviously, I'm still affected by it. It was a sweet scene. As he's having the dream, Song Tae has woken up before him and sees that Kong Tae has a strange expression on his face that he doesn't recognize. When he goes to look at his emotion cards to kind of compare and see what it is, he realizes that Kong Tae is happy. And I think this is a turning point for Song Tae, since he says out loud that he's never seen that look on Kong Tae's face before. And I think that Song Tae is starting to connect the dots that maybe Moon Young is good for his brother, and that his brother is finally starting to be happy, and that he hasn't been happy before. The next day, we see Song In visiting Moon Young to check up on how the book is coming along, and we see that Song Jae, who's there to keep Moon Young safe, though she hasn't been doing a very good job, is feeling and looking pretty ragged, since she is thoroughly creeped out by the house and isn't sleeping well. She tries to tell Song In, but he doesn't care and just wants to know where Moon Young is. And when he finds that she's in the library working on the new book, he asks, what's it about? What's going on? After they chat, and he finds out that she doesn't really have the story fully fleshed out and it might not be anything, he asks who's going to be the illustrator, and she responds, my best friend. At the same time, we see Song Tae at Jiri's home getting his money, and later we see him calling his brother and asking him if he's eaten, like Kong Tae usually asks him. When Kong Tae says he hasn't, Song Tae tells him to meet him for dinner. So it seems Song Tae has decided to step up and be the big brother he should be to Kong Tae, since at the restaurant he does all the things a big brother should do for their little brother, like cutting up his food and giving him extra pieces from his plate, to make sure he's getting enough to eat. It's just overall a very sweet, sweet scene. But before we see this, we see Song-in giving Moon-young the news about her father, which is that he's going downhill even more and doesn't have much longer to live. He found this out from Juri on their date, and he tries to talk to Moon-young and be like, look, this might be your last chance, you should go see him. But she is like, I've been an orphan this whole time, he's been dead to me for a while, it's no big deal. And Song-in kind of pleads with her, you know, explaining, look, he's been sick from this tumor this whole time, like, you can't blame him, you're gonna regret not saying goodbye. But she doesn't budge. We do see her reflecting about her father after Song-in leaves, as she looks at the family photo she has where she's had her father kind of folded out this whole time. She unbids it and looks at the photo, and then she tries to call Kang Tae, and when he answers, she tells him that she's hungry, and he's obviously telling her over the phone that he's going to have dinner with Song Tae, and she tries to invite herself, but obviously it doesn't work out that way. That's then when we see the adorable scenes of the brothers having their dinner. As they are leaving the restaurant, this is when Moon-young appears, trying to get Song Tae to pay her bill since he had just bought lunch for his brother and himself, but he ignores her and continues to walk out. Moon-young, of course, goes after him, making a scene, yelling for him, like just leaving the bill for Kang Tae to kind of handle as she's chasing after his brother, and is just yelling at him, being like, she finally stops him, grabs him, she's like, be my big brother, give me an allowance. She tells him that she doesn't have a family and that she really is an orphan now, you know, because of what she just found out about her father, and she wants Song Tae to be her big brother. Song Tae gets her to let go of his hand, and after looking at Kang Tae, who's standing and kind of waiting to see what Song Tae's gonna do, tells Kang Tae, let's go, basically ignoring Moon-young. As he's walking away, Kang Tae tries to call out to get Song Tae to accept Moon-young, but it doesn't happen. Moon-young ends up yelling, be my big brother, to Song Tae, which causes him to stop. And after a pause and calling Kang Tae to come, let's go, he then calls Moon-young. That's him forgiving her and accepting her as family, and they walk hand in hand back home, and we also see them move in. But wait, there's more. Now, they could have ended the episode on a very sweet note, but no, they must end it with an eerie cliffhanger. After the newly formed family is back living in Moon-young's home, we see some scary things happening in the basement. We see the basement door, which looks locked to me, but it could have been unlocked, but we see a light turning on inside. Someone is in the basement, and we see someone who looks like Moon-young's mother from the back. Still not showing her face, but it looks like her mother, and she sits down at the makeup vanity inside the room, and we see her take out the butterfly pendant from the drawer, and then we see the pendant's shadow loom over the family photo over young Moon-young, and then we see it over her bed in her bedroom, and over Kang Tae as well, and that's how they end the episode. Couldn't leave it on a happy note. They had to really freak you out right at the end, and I'm now very curious as to what is going on. Who is this woman? It is obviously Moon-young's mother, alive. Who is it? Is it Kdrama? I don't know. I'm kind of feeling like she really is just a fan, and I'm now wondering if maybe whoever Moon-young's mother is killed her, and that's why she didn't come back to the hospital. It was such a sweet episode. Obviously, just talking about it again brought me to tears as I was thinking back on it. Just a really sweet, this is just a great drama. I know that it's morbid, but I'm excited to see when it's discovered by everyone that Moon-young's mother killed Song Tae and Kang Tae's mother. Like, that's going to be devastating. I know that that's horrible to be excited about. You know, once that is all out in the open and everybody can fully heal from it, they can finally, in my mind, be happy. So that's what I'm rooting for, is the happiness after the pain. You know, I know that's weird, but I think that the growth from it and the finally getting over the trauma, that's what I'm excited to witness. With that, I'm going to end this episode. Thank you again for waiting and being patient with me. I know it's been a while. I still really love this drama, and I still wanted to give you guys a recap, so thank you for watching it, even though it's been a while since it's been up. And let me know in the comments below what your favorite scene was in episode 11. But I'm excited to see what you guys thought of this episode. And if you liked this recap video, please make sure to subscribe, ring the bell to be notified when my next video is up. And until then, thank you so much for watching. Please be safe out there. I hope you're doing well, and I'll see you soon. Bye.